How to invest $1,000 safely in the UK right now. So you've got a spare £1,000 and you're thinking, right, let's be smart about this. Let's invest it safely. It's a commendable thought, truly. But what if I told you that the very concept of investing £1,000 safely in the UK right now is a dangerous illusion if you don't grasp one fundamental, often overlooked truth about where genuine risk lies? It's not about avoiding risk entirely. That's impossible. It's about understanding the right risks to take and the wrong ones to avoid, like the plague. And I promise you, by the 3-minute and 45-second mark of this video, I'm going to dismantle a widely held belief about a safe home for your first grand, revealing why it might actually be one of the worst places for it if you're looking for any kind of meaningful growth. Because here's the kicker. The biggest investment risk isn't losing your money, it's losing its future potential by doing nothing, or worse, doing the wrong thing disguised as safety. You're here because that $1,000 is burning a hole in your pocket, but not in a frivolous way. You want it to do more, to be more, to grow. But the moment you type "invest $1,000 UK" into Google, a tidal wave of conflicting advice, jargon-filled articles, and guaranteed return schemes washes over you, leaving you feeling more confused and anxious than when you started. The fear of making a mistake, of picking the wrong thing, of seeing that hard-earned cash dwindle away, it's paralyzing, isn't it? It's that knot in your stomach that whispers, maybe just leave it in the current account. At least it's safe there. But is it really? With inflation nibbling away at its value day by day, that safe current account is more like a leaky bucket. The consequences of this paralysis, or of making a poorly informed decision, are stark. Your money stagnates, its purchasing power eroded. You miss out on the incredible power of compounding, where your money starts earning money on itself. Or worse, you get lured by a flashy ad promising quick riches, only to see your grand disappear into the ether, leaving you cynical and vowing off investing for good. Many people, bless them, try the usual routes. They might ask their Uncle Arthur down the pub, who once bought some shares in BT back in the 80s and thinks he's Warren Buffett. Or they'll chase those high-interest savings accounts that offer a marginally better rate for a few months before dropping off a cliff. These common attempts often fail because they're not rooted in a sound understanding of what investing $1,000 wisely and safely actually entails in today's economic landscape. The urgency is real. That $1,000 has potential, but only if you unlock it correctly. Let me tell you about James. James is a young graphic designer from Manchester, full of creative energy and recently chuffed to bits after receiving a $1,000 bonus from work for a particularly brilliant campaign he'd designed. He lived with his folks to save on rent, and this grand was, for him, a significant sum. He was determined not to fritter it away on takeaways and new trainers. "I want to invest it," he told his dad, George, over a Sunday roast. George, a cautious man by nature who'd worked his entire life as a postman, nodded approvingly but advised, "Good lad, just put it in premium bonds, son, safe as houses. Your nan won a tenner once." James smiled. Premium bonds sounded, well, a bit like something his nan would do. Safe, yes, but exciting, growth-oriented. He wasn't so sure. That evening, James sat at his small desk in his bedroom, the glow of his laptop illuminating his determined face. The aroma of leftover roast beef still faintly hung in the air. He typed "best way to invest $1,000 UK" into the search bar. Instantly, his screen was flooded. adverts for crypto platforms with cartoon rockets, forex trading gurus promising financial freedom from a beach in Bali. Guaranteed 10% monthly returns, screamed one particularly gaudy banner. James felt a flicker of excitement, then a wave of suspicion. Could it really be that easy? He nearly clicked on one that featured a surprisingly well-known daytime TV presenter whose reassuring smile seemed to promise credibility. He hovered his mouse, his heart thumping a little faster. That was his first mini-mystery. Would this apparently endorsed platform be his ticket to quick riches or a fast track to an empty wallet? He resisted, a small voice of doubt, perhaps his dad's cautious influence, holding him back. He then stumbled upon a forum, a chaotic mess of anonymous experts arguing about penny stocks and market timing. One thread, titled, "How I Turned $500 into $50,000 in 6 months," caught his eye. He devoured it, his initial skepticism warring with a growing sense of FOMO. The jargon was dense, short squeezes, diamond hands, to the moon. It felt like an exclusive club, and he desperately wanted in. But the strategies seemed incredibly risky, more like betting than investing. He thought again about his dad's advice on premium bonds. Safe, yes. But what was the actual likelihood of winning anything significant? And if he didn't win, his $1,000 would just sit there, not growing at all. Was that truly a good use of his bonus? This became his second mini-mystery. Were premium bonds the sensible haven his dad believed, or a stagnant pond for his precious capital? He spent hours going down these rabbit holes, the initial excitement giving way to a headache and a growing sense of frustration. The digital noise was deafening. He pushed his chair back, the cheap casters squeaking on the laminate floor, and stared out at the rainy Manchester night. "This is impossible," he muttered. "Maybe investing just isn't for people like me." He felt a familiar sense of overwhelm, the kind that often led to inaction. Just as he was about to close his laptop and admit defeat, he remembered a conversation he'd had at work with Priya, a senior developer in the office. Priya was quiet, unassuming, but James had always been impressed by her calm confidence and the way she seemed to have her life sorted. He recalled her once mentioning very casually that she'd been investing since she was at university. He hesitated for a moment, feeling a bit foolish, asking for financial advice, but then thought, what have I got to lose? He decided he'd chat with her the next day. He wondered what she'd say. Would she laugh at his meager $1,000? Would she recommend some complicated financial product he'd never understand? This was his third mini-mystery. What was Priya's secret? And could it possibly apply to someone like him with just $1,000 to start? The thought of talking to someone sensible, someone real, offered a sliver of hope in the overwhelming digital fog. He realized that navigating this world alone, armed only with Google and a desire not to mess up, was a recipe for disaster. What James was beginning to understand was that true safety in investing wasn't about finding a mythical no-risk option, but about understanding the landscape, managing realistic risks, and aligning his choices with his actual goals he hadn't even clearly defined yet. He was about to discover that the path to investing his $1,000 wisely was less about chasing unicorns and more about embracing a few simple, powerful principles that most beginners overlook in their frantic search for quick wins. The key, he would soon learn, was hidden in plain sight, often dismissed as too boring or too simple by a world obsessed with novelty and speed. The next day at the office, during a lull in a particularly tedious team meeting about website analytics, James managed to catch Priya by the water cooler. The air hummed with the low thrum of office life, keyboards clacking, distant chatter, the smell of slightly burnt coffee from the machine down the hall. "Priya," he began a little nervously, "got a mo? I wanted to ask you something about investing." Priya, refilling her sleek metal water bottle, turned with a friendly smile. "Sure, James. What's on your mind?" James quickly explained his 1,000 bonus and his bewildering journey through the online investment jungle. He half expected her to launch into a complex explanation of derivatives or blockchain, but instead she chuckled. "Ah, the 1,000 question. It's a great starting point, and believe me, we've all been down those confusing internet rabbit holes." She didn't laugh at his amount. She validated his ambition. "The thing is, James," she continued, leaning slightly against the cooler, her voice calm and measured, "investing safely, with a relatively small amount like $1,000 isn't about finding some magic bullet or a super high return, no risk investment, because that, frankly, doesn't exist. It's about understanding a few core principles." Priya then asked him a question that cut through all the noise. "What's the $1,000 for, James? What are you hoping it will achieve, and when do you think you'll need it?" James blinked. He hadn't really thought that far ahead. Just to grow, I guess. Maybe for a house deposit one day, or just more money?" Priya nodded. "Okay, so potentially a medium to long-term goal. That's important. Because if you told me you needed it in 6 months for a new car, my advice would be very different. Probably just keep it in the highest interest, easy access savings account you can find, and accept that it won't grow much, but it will be safe and accessible." This was the first revelation for James. The purpose and time frame of the investment were crucial. Priya explained that trying to make a quick killing on $1,000 with a short-term horizon often leads people into overly risky ventures or scams. For long-term goals, she said, the biggest risk isn't necessarily market volatility. It's inflation eroding your money if you leave it in cash or missing out on the power of compound growth. She then gently dismantled the premium bond idea. Premium bonds are safe, yes, in that you'll get your $1,000 back. But the prize rate is effectively an interest rate, and it's often very low. The vast majority of people win nothing or very little, so your $1,000 isn't really working for you. It's just sitting there, potentially losing value in real terms to inflation. It's more of a lottery ticket with your capital guaranteed than an investment. That phrase struck James. A lottery ticket with his capital guaranteed. Suddenly, premium bonds seemed far less appealing. Priya then introduced him to the concept of low-cost index tracker funds within a stocks and shares ISA. Imagine, she said, instead of trying to pick individual winning companies, which is incredibly hard even for professionals, you buy a tiny slice of a whole market, like the FTSE 100, which is the biggest 100 companies in the UK, or even a global index that covers thousands of companies worldwide. As the market generally grows over the long term, so does your investment. She explained that because these funds are passive, they just track the market. They don't have expensive fund managers trying to outsmart it. Their fees are usually very low. And the stocks and shares ISA wrapper, she added, means any growth or income you make is tax-free in the UK. With $1,000, you're well within your annual ISA allowance. James listened intently, the hum of the office fading into the background. This made sense. It sounded sensible. Almost too sensible after the hype he'd seen online. "But isn't the stock market risky?" he asked, voicing his main concern. "I've seen the news, markets crashing." Priya acknowledged his fear. "Yes, markets go up and down in the short term. That's volatility. And if you invested your $1,000 and needed it all back in 6 months, and the market happened to dip then, you could lose money. That's why it's generally for longer-term goals, say 5 years plus. Over the long run, historically, markets have tended to go up, significantly outpacing cash savings and inflation. The key is not to panic during the dips and to stay invested." She then explained the importance of diversification, which index funds provide automatically by spreading his money across many companies. "So with $1,000, Priya summarized, a good, relatively safe starting point for long-term growth could be to open a stocks and shares ISA with a reputable, low-cost platform and invest in a diversified global or broad market index tracker fund. Then, ideally, try to add to it regularly, even small amounts, and leave it alone to do its thing for many years." She emphasized the reputable, low-cost platform part, warning him against newer, flashier apps that might have hidden fees or less robust security. She suggested a few well-known, established UK platforms for him to research. The boring option, James realized, might just be the smartest option. James felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Priya hadn't given him a hot stock tip. She'd given him a framework, a philosophy. He spent that evening researching the platforms Priya had mentioned, comparing their fees, the range of index funds they offered, and user reviews. He looked at long-term charts of market performance. He learned about pound cost averaging, how investing a regular amount can smooth out the bumps. It wasn't about getting rich quick. It was about sensible, steady growth. He realized that the safety he was seeking wasn't an absence of any risk, but the presence of a well-thought-out strategy that managed risk appropriately for his goals. The allure of the crypto rockets and forex gurus faded. He understood now that their promises were built on sand. The path Priya had outlined felt solid, like bedrock. It was the antithesis of the get-rich-quick schemes, a quiet, disciplined approach that resonated with his desire to be genuinely smart with his money, not just lucky. He was beginning to see that investing his $1,000 wasn't a one-off decision, but the first step on a longer journey. And the key to that journey, the thing that would truly keep his investment safe in the context of long-term growth, was not just what he invested in, but how he approached it, and the understanding that patience and discipline were just as important as picking the right fund. He was ready to move beyond the confusion and take control, but he knew there was one more crucial element he needed to factor in, a common pitfall many beginners overlook, even when they've chosen a sensible investment. James now had a clear direction, thanks to Priya's guidance. He'd chosen a well-established UK investment platform with low fees and a good range of index funds. He'd selected a globally diversified equity index tracker. He was ready to transfer his $1,000 and hit the invest button. But just before he did, he remembered Priya mentioning something about not panicking during the dips. This led him to consider the psychological aspect, the final crucial element for investing safely over the long term, especially when starting out. This is where many beginners, even those who've made sensible initial choices, come unstuck. It's not about the investment itself, but about their reaction to it. He realized that true investment safety with $1,000 or any amount isn't just about picking the right fund. It's about building the right mindset and habits around it. This forms the core of what I call the foundation first framework for new investors. It's a simple three-step approach: clarify, simplify, and commit. First, clarify your purpose and temperament. Before you invest a single penny, you need to be crystal clear on why you are investing this $1,000. Is it for a goal that's 5, 10, or 20 years away? As Priya highlighted, this time frame is critical. If it's for a short-term goal, under 3 to 5 years, then investing in the stock market, even via an index fund, carries the risk that you might need the money during a temporary downturn and be forced to sell at a loss. For short-term goals, high-interest cash savings or perhaps very low-risk bonds are more appropriate, accepting lower potential returns for higher capital preservation. So step 1 is goal definition. Write down your specific financial goal for this $1,000 and its time frame. Be honest. Then assess your risk tolerance. How would you genuinely feel if your $1,000 investment dropped to $800 in a market dip next month? Would you panic and sell, or would you understand it's part of the long-term journey? Answering this honestly helps you choose investments aligned with your emotional capacity to handle volatility. If your investment keeps you awake at night, it's not the right investment for you, no matter how good its prospects. A practical example for James. His goal for the $1,000 is a house deposit, realistically 7 to 10 years away. His risk tolerance is moderate. He'd be uneasy with a big drop, but understands it's for the long term. This confirms that a diversified equity index fund is suitable. The expected result of clarify. You'll have a clear understanding of whether investing this $1,000 in the stock market aligns with your specific goals time frame and your personal comfort with risk. Second, simplify your investment choice. With $1,000, complexity is your enemy. You don't need to be dabbling in individual stocks, crypto, or esoteric investment trusts. Your aim is broad diversification at a low cost. So, select a low-cost platform. Choose a well-regulated, established UK platform that offers stocks and shares ISAs and a good range of low-cost index funds or ETFs. Compare fees carefully. Look for low or zero platform fees for holding funds and low dealing charges, if any. Then, choose a diversified index fund. For a first $1,000, a single globally diversified equity index tracker fund is often an excellent choice. This spreads your $1,000 across hundreds, if not thousands, of companies in different countries and sectors, significantly reducing the risk associated with any single company or region failing. Look for funds with a low ongoing charge figure, OCF, ideally well under 0.5%. You don't need a dozen funds when you're starting with $1,000. One good one is often enough. The widely held belief I mentioned at the start, the one that needs dismantling. It's the idea that putting your first $1,000 into a standard savings account or even premium bonds is the safest growth option. While your capital is protected from bank failure up to FSCS limits, or in the case of premium bonds returned in full, it is critically exposed to inflation risk and offers minimal to no real growth potential. For any goal beyond the very short term, this safety is an illusion that costs you dearly in lost opportunity. The expected result of simplify? You'll have chosen a straightforward, low-cost and appropriately diversified investment for your $1,000, avoiding unnecessary complexity and high fees. Third, commit to long-term discipline. Investing $1,000 is just the start. True wealth building comes from consistency and patience. So, automate and augment if possible. If you can, set up a small, regular monthly contribution to your stocks and shares ISA, even if it's just $25 or $50. This builds the habit and leverages pound cost averaging. Then, critically, resist tinkering and emotional reactions. Once you've invested, leave it alone as much as possible. Don't check it every day. Don't panic sell during market dips if your time frame is long. Don't get swayed by hot tips to constantly switch funds. The news will always be full of doom and gloom or irrational exuberance. Stick to your plan. The most successful investors are often those who do the least, allowing time and compounding to work their magic. Finally, review. Periodically, not obsessively. Once or twice a year, check if your investment still aligns with your goals. Don't make drastic changes based on short-term performance. A common objection is, what if I pick the wrong fund and it goes down? If you've chosen a broadly diversified global index fund, for it to go down permanently would essentially mean the entire global economy has collapsed, in which case we all have bigger problems. Short-term dips are normal, the expected result of commit. You'll cultivate the patient, disciplined mindset essential for long-term investment success, avoiding costly emotional mistakes. So, investing $1,000 safely in the UK right now means clarifying your purpose, simplifying your choice to a low-cost diversified index fund within a stocks and shares ISA for most long-term goals, and committing to long-term discipline, resisting the urge to panic or tinker. It's about protecting your money not just from loss, but from stagnation and inflation, and giving it the best chance to genuinely grow. James took this path. His $1,000 is now working for him, quietly compounding. He sleeps well. If you're ready to take that first step with your $1,000, I've put together a UK First 1K investment checklist. It walks you through the foundation first steps, platform considerations, and has links to resources for finding low-cost global index funds. It's completely free for the first 250 people who click the link in the description. Our next video will tackle, are UK property ISAs a good idea in 2025? A deep dive into a niche, but often talked about investment. You won't want to miss that if property is on your mind. So what's the biggest thing that's been stopping you from investing your first $1,000 or a similar amount until now? Share your thoughts in the comments. Let's get the discussion going.